Episode 196, Call to Arms and a Look Back. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 30th of December 2019. John Moore reporting. We begin this episode with a couple of quotes from some Facebook posts. Quote, from Natalie Schuer, quote, please stop framing climate change denial as a matter of ignorant yokels disbelieving science. It's a deeply coordinated propaganda campaign bankrolled by right-wing owners of capital whose interests would be threatened by the legitimate efforts to curb emissions. Treat it as such. End quote. And a second quote from, of course, Bill Mollison. Quote, there is one and only one solution, and we have almost no time to try it. We must turn all our resources to repairing the natural world and train all our young people to help. They want to. We need to give them this last chance to create forests, soils, clean waters, clean energies, secure communities, stable regions, and to know how to do it from hands-on experience. End quote. And there we have the dichotomy of our time. All revolutions can be seen through this lens. The old guard clinging to the system that put them in power, and the youth full of hope and dynamism, ready for the change. We are at a crisis time. A crisis is where the outcome is yet to be determined and all the forces are in play. And things can change quickly. If we cast our minds back to 1788 and imagine the mindset of the French monarchy at that Christmas time, lavish parties, a sense of divine entitlement, and yet by the end of 1793, a decapitated king. Another analogy which I find useful at this time is the end of the Roman Republic. A tampered with constitution, the letter of the law not the spirit, and vested interests clinging to power. Saturnalia 54 BC would give very little hint of the bloodshed to come. I realise these two examples are full of violence, which I am not advocating. I really hope we are above that now, yet the history of humanity does not give me much hope. Here in Australia, we are a microcosm of the climate clash. Big enough to be a continent, small enough to contain all the forces at play. Weather patterns for the last 3 summers have been periodically pouring extremely hot air from the central desert regions down to the populated southeast of the continent. This, combined with the collapse of rainfall patterns and the push of suburbia into the peri-urban bushland interfaces, has created a situation of bushfire disasters which is seen across the globe. Fires in California, in countries from Spain to Bulgaria. Chile exploded the other night, and fires through the Siberian tundra, in inverted commas, are all more evidence pointing to where we are now. To bring it closer to home, we are 200 mils or 8 inches down on rainfall for the year. A relatively warm October turned to a cool November accompanied by weeks of the roaring 40s ripping across Tasmania and sucking the moisture out of the landscape. All still looked green enough entering December, but in the last week or so the landscape has turned from green to brown. Nowhere near as hot as the mainland, but dry enough to have me scanning the horizon regularly during the day for signs of bushfire. Last February, the south and east of Tasmania suffered big enough fires. It could be the north's turn this summer. I hope not, but preparations continue daily. On the larger vision, we must act now. Our federal government's miserable behaviour at COP25, still clinging to emission reductions from the Kyoto Protocol as an accounting measure to avoid doing anything now, is embarrassing and dangerous. I might also point out that our Prime Minister, when just a minister in a previous government, literally brought a lump of coal into Parliament to prove how harmless it was, and he's also a Pentecostalist, so more concerned with the alleged afterlife than this one. What's to be done? I vacillate between despair and anger. To happier thoughts, on the hands in the dirt level, this year has been one of experimentation, implementation and learning. At work I've set up 10 3 by 1.5 metre garden beds that are 150 mils deep. The ground was covered in wet cardboard, the edging added and the beds filled with 6-month-old spent mushroom compost. Into 6 of these beds I've planted out according to a plan. There's an image of the plan in the show notes, in an attempt to see what grows well in this district. There's a mix of cultivars. The beds were planted out every couple of weeks to ensure succession and survival of some beds if we caught a late frost. We didn't, so everything is growing away nicely. The other 4 beds I planted out to broad beans. Earlier this month, the first bed was slashed as the beans had started to flower. The fallen beans completely covered the bed to a depth of about 5 centimetres, or about 2 inches in the old money. These were sprayed with sea salt to get some biological activity happening, and the bed was covered in half-rotted pea straw. Onto this I added some blood and bone tea. After New Year I'll have a look underneath to see what's going on. The plan is to create as much organic matter as possible to grow in. The vegetable plots, as per the mentioned previously plan, have the following planted in them: rocket, cress, cabbage, kale, pumpkin, marigold, zucchini, squash, lettuce, broad beans, sunflowers, beetroot, silver beet, and tomato. This is quite a selection. It presents some issues with growing space and harvesting timings, but the soil is well and truly covered. I've been harvesting rocket, cress and lettuce for a month. Kale will be added to the salad mix this next week. The cabbage, beetroot and sunflowers are miniature varieties to save space and time to harvest. The marigolds are for both beauty and companion planting purposes. Seeing the red and yellow of these flowers amongst the massive greenery is quite a treat, and there'll be a photo in the show notes over on the website. The interplanting consequences and the yields will be covered in a later episode. For now, I'm just chuffed at how well the beds are working out. Separately, I have a corn patch growing nicely and ready to power away as summer kicks in, which it has this week. In addition, we have 30 kilos of seed potatoes that were spread across quite a big area. They're poking through at the top of the ground, and I think we'll be harvesting them from February till about the end of March. The gardening I'm doing at work is part of a disability program, teaching life and employment skills, as well as building a team of gardeners who have fun, learn and help feed their families. The gardening I'm doing at home runs from 1 square metre gardens through to raspberries, the orchard and the paddocks, and to patches of spuds tucked into corners here and there. There's a level of food production we can all achieve wherever we are, and the 1 square metre garden is a good place for beginners to, begin. The idea is something I've been playing around with in thought experiments. The one at home has suffered from being underwatered as this part of the world dried out and warmed up. Carrots and brassicas have run to seed, peas are still flowering and fruiting, and the lettuce are providing leaves. I'm putting together a dedicated salads green version and an herbal option. I see a mosaic of these in my mind's eye stretching across our proposed garden area. The excess roosters, goslings and a lamb will be dealt with over the next few months, freeing up space and feed pressures. By then, the pigs will be ready for the freezer, and the larger garden beds they've worked over will be down to garlic, turnips and peas. Lots of little steps and tests across this 1.6 acres. The far northern third of the property is in desperate need of liquid manures, worms and some strategic grazing. That's a task for next autumn-winter. I'll keep you posted as the progress continues. Back on the larger scale, things are reaching a crisis across the planet as we slide into the conclusion of 2019. May next year be a fruitful, productive one, in which we continue to turn this ship of humanity onto a safer course, a course that travels with nature and is not cutting across her bows. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. We are in the process of writing Regen Earth's 2nd season of podcasts with my co-host, Rich Bowden. I'll let you know when they're roaming free on the interwebs. In the meantime, you might want to listen to our short Season 1 and subscribe so you're ready for when Season 2 drops. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.